Welcome to my technical calculations. Check this out. You'll see why I say it like that in a mocking way. Well, you know, not in a mean way, in a silly way. This is my left hand. And can you see this for sure? This is why I say it like I did, right? Because it's kind of silly. This is my left hand. And if I measure this, right, basically just from widest point to widest point, right at the knuckles, squeeze my fingers together pretty well. I know there's, you know, the natural hand arches like I talk about, you know, but I'll flatten my hands out on the counter here to really see the difference, right? Just squeezing the fingers together pretty well, but then pushing down so they're, you know, the knuckles are flat against the counter. We're at right about 3.5 inches. Definitely no more, right? If I get right at the edge of the joint here, and then right at the edge of this pinky joint here on my left hand, definitely no more than 3.5. Just right about exactly 3.5. I'll kind of move this around so that, you know, if I'm not sitting in the right spot, holding still, then we've got kind of a little bit of varied positioning. And just, you know, trying to keep my hand normal and natural. I guess I'll keep my thumb off the edge because I want it to be fairly the same, left to right. And if I do it with my right hand and I don't put my thumb on the edge, then it could be different. Just the way that the hand, right, is shaped. I'm doing this for myself, but then I can also share this under In The Image Clothing Company. Yeah, there's a documentation as of the, I guess we'll do it more like this. 13th of September 2025. Look at this. I mean, no doubt. And I mean, if I can squeeze as tight as I can squeeze my fingers together, you can just see the shape of my hand looks different. It comes so far in from out before it meets the fingers, and then it's like the fingers are so much more narrow than the just not all that much room here. But do you see what I mean? Just the shape of my hand is different a lot on my right one here. Just so much wider. Well, it's just what I talk about. So this can be one of those videos that I've made some videos and I've labeled them, at least as of today's date, personal patterning, where, you know, as the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, my name is Evan Strong, by the way. Well, anyway, this is that little mark, 3.5. That's where my left hand is, right? No wider than 3.5 inches, definitely not. Maybe even slightly under 3.5. Well, just right about there, okay? I mean, if I try to spread my hand wide, if I try to put it together, I just want it to be as real as it is, you know, without trying to like over exaggerate the difference, because the big point is on the 23rd of September this month will be our 1-year anniversary, if you will. Not that it really has to be something like that, but since founding In The Image Clothing Company. And I've done a lot of work in my right hand to get it to work more naturally. You know, the right hand is often like this, cocked in out of its only neutral position, right? As I talk about as the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, I'm often showing the wrist. The neutral wrist is straight out from the pinky finger, and then there's all the motion there, right from there in all directions, as if you just lay your arm down on the counter like I'm doing here. Straight out from the neutral wrist is the end of the pinky finger down to the elbow, right? That's just how it is. And so right hands, though, often are like this, cocked down, if you will. There's a term for this position of the wrist. I don't know it currently. But then this whole outer side of the forearm gets so shortened, and you can just kind of see a little bit of difference in the way that the tendons come up and meet into the base of this bone that ends up coming up to the pinky finger in my left wrist versus my right one. And just when I rest my hands, my right wrist tends to just kind of fall this way, right? And like into the shortening of the patterning that we get into. And the fingers only ever work in line, okay? Straight out from the neutral wrist to the pinky, the fingers work here in line. Natural hand arches, like I say, like I show, correlating with the arches in our feet. Man, but I've done a lot to break up the pinky finger, the excess cartilage there. Sorry, not cartilage necessarily. Excess bone mass, though, in the outside of my, well, see, like right here. Just this whole joint of the pinky in the right hand just is so much bigger in most people than the left. Oh, I mean, look at it. If you, as well as you can see it, at least on camera, with my, you know, not so professional angle and not professional camera and lighting and position. I don't really care for it to be any more than it needs to be. I just think it's good to document these things, right? Because, well, I'm the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. I just speak out of things that I learn as I go, practice what I preach. Really, I preach what I have practiced, as I say. And I've shown quite a bit of my hands along this like journey, if you will. And yeah, okay, my wrist and my forearm and all the patterning, scar tissue on the outside of the forearm. We talk about that so much. The right elbow, the right forearm, the right pinky finger, right? Because the right-handed world, clothing patterns themselves are right-handed. If you're dominant with your right hand's probably just wider, not as rounded, not as much dexterity. It's hard for people to actually touch their pads of their fingers to the pad of their thumb. A lot of it's too short of fingernails, and you'll use the tips of your fingers, and then there goes your neutral wrist, rather than the pads of the fingers meeting with the pads of the thumb as the hand is designed to work by God. But lots of things, right, go into just altering the right hand. I'm a hand model. That's literally what this is. That's funny. I don't know. I just feel like I've heard that a lot growing up. Being a hand model is like a joke, actually, is the way that I've heard it. I don't know why exactly, but that's actually what I'm doing here. But yeah, just see that pinky joint? This one I can roll the pinky and it stays closer to the middle finger when I'm like rolling this joint from like one side of the ring finger joint to the other side of it, if you will, right? The pinky joint where it meets the hand. But this side, it just doesn't stay anywhere near as close to the ring finger. Like this left hand stays fairly close. My right hand, pinky finger wants to like just stick off to the side, and the insertion here of the musculature and just the bone coming up has been so altered, because if your wrist is like this, right, then the pinky is working over here rather than working in line with the forearm, right? So anyway, I just kind of wanted to document it with an actual measuring tape, because after a year at least, right, of me addressing my pinky fingers discrepancies, it's still, it meaning my right hand is still about 1/8 of an inch, probably right about there, give or take, rather than here for the left hand. About 3 and what would that be, 5/8, give or take. Right about there's how wide my right hand is, right at the base of the knuckles. Man. And my left hand, this is still my right hand. I'm just gonna flip this around because I do want to measure this and get this documented fairly well. Yeah, about 3 and 5/8. And my left hand is about 3.5, and maybe slightly less even than 3.5. So anyway, I wanted to document it under video because I've actually broken up quite a bit of that excessively grown bone mass and you know, just alteration that's happened here in my right hand, and it's still this much different, right? So man, I want to get it from different angles. I want to make it clear. I'm not trying to exaggerate it, and I just couldn't, you know. And you can just see, and I've shown, you know, and it was even worse, even wider. You know, I talk about it like this: if you're right-handed, you'll cut your right fingernails, probably, for a lot of people at least, shorter than your left ones, because they're easier to clean, they don't catch on things but the fingernails are so important to support the fingertips. That's why they're there. Ideally cut relatively flat on the tips so that the fingers don't roll, and then we keep that neutral wrist position, right? Rather than our fingers just rolling out of that neutral. But yeah, there's been so much through my own personal life, and same with everybody, right, that will affect, and has in my case, my right hand, to just make it be inhibited, right? Even just tying shoes unevenly to the right, your right foot can't grip and arch inward, right? Correlating with your hand arches. And so your right wrist will never be neutral. I mean, the hands and the feet are essentially the same thing. Any patterning within clothing that puts the right side more external, well, you need your neutral, right? Like straight out from the thumbs when you're walking. And if your right side's external, your hand just kind of opens. Anytime anything in clothing places your right arm, stemming at the shoulder, let's say, lower, your hand just can't close as well because muscles only contract. And when you contract your hand, it essentially elevates your shoulder, meaning those two things correlate, and it has to be able to happen at both the hand and the shoulder. The hands are essentially the shoulders, right? And as I say, the feet are essentially the hips. Anyway, yeah, anytime anything puts the right arm farther away from the body's center line than the left, it'll just be harder to close your own hand. The neutral wrist is actually slightly cocked back because, well, if you go to grab something, you have to have your wrist back. Otherwise, you just run your fingers into something. And so your arms need to be at your own sides to have your wrist in its neutral workings. And so, you know, minding the gap, like we say, an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast is titled Mind the Gap. But anything between your own arm and your own rib cage, like seams down the armpit of clothing, side seams in clothing, especially rotated seams, you can check out In the Image Clothing Company's rotated seam modification. Right, even the dreaded collar seam modification under In the Image Clothing Company, just collars off to the right will place your right arm off to the right. Your right upper trapezius muscle can't contract, which will just open your hand more. If you have a collar seam on the upper left of your collar, of your top, right, the right side is actually what's inhibited, pulled away from the center line of the body and dropped. Okay, so anyway, all the things in clothing, a right-handed knot around your waist, right? How drawstrings affect body mechanics under In the Image Clothing Company. Just check out what we do and what we show. The point is, a right-handed knot will take the pelvis and make the whole right side of the body external, right? The pelvis will go anterior and left in a sense. The right side of the body will externally rotate, and there's your foot going out and your hand going out, neither one able to grip and arch essentially, right? Which looks like this to then the neutral wrist, or for the feet, right? Gripping inward and the neutral ankle straight out from the pinky toe up that outward curvature of the lower leg. So there's a lot that goes into the hands, and I just want to document, like I was saying, just today's date, and like I have done a lot here at the, you know, earlier stages of In the Image Clothing Company, my own body's patterning, so that you can see that as time goes on, it's no longer in patterning, and just be able to see the difference. And so a lot of it is just, you know, breaking up the scar tissue on the outside of the hand there, right where that pinky finger is. I mean, look at everything. This tendon goes like in and then back out, connects to the bone, and then musculature here, and then the bone itself pokes out here, and then the pinky comes in to where it would like naturally be, right? It would naturally be clear in here, straight in line, but there's all this going on built up on the outside. This is my left side. It's much less dramatic, right? Less musculature here, less of a bone spur here, less alteration here at the tendon of the arm up to the wrist bone. You know, I don't know the exact names for all these bones as of right now, but just you know, much less dramatic on this left side as it is on the right side here, right? And as you can see, especially looking out here at the outside of my pinky, it just comes, there's this big bulge of bone there that is just excessively grown from being just pulled on, from being in an incorrect position. We talk about the body just needs to always reside in its neutrals, right? And well, mine definitely hadn't been able to for about 20 years, give or take, you know. So and then founding In The Image Clothing Company, that's what we do with clothing. We allow the human body to work, you know, placing clothing on the body, fitting correct, staying centered, being made from 100% natural materials. But anyway, I mean, you can just see just the difference in how this is, it like rocks on both the bone, the musculature, and then just the angles of things are just not normal, right? Shape of my hand on the right is just not normal, and this is after a year of In The Image Clothing Company. And so meaning through that time doing a lot of release in a lot of ways, outside of the forearm and the elbow, in the pinky bone, mostly here, you know, the bone up into the wrist, and really getting the wrist to be able to just have all of its motion when it's been so stuck over here, and the hand just gets like worked like this, all open. We need our fingers to be right next to each other, neutral, and then actually be able to come this way as well. And that's hard for a lot of people within patterning, right? And this is my left arm, just can come so much farther this way than my right can. Things just pull all up through here on the outside of the forearm. That's where all that musculature adheres to the bone, right? There's two bones out here in the forearm that have rotations correlating with our lower legs. And so anyway, just scar tissue all throughout, and bone actually growing excessively as well. So there we go. Okay, I just wanted to make sure and document that, the actual physical size difference, because the whole point is you'll never have even shoulders, you'll never have your feet even work normal, and everything in between. Your jaw will be pulled out of its only center when it stabilizes the entire body. If your hand is just wider on one side, it's just going to alter all the mechanics traveling through the whole body, and it does travel through the entire body, just because there's a center line and you've got two hands opposing. So yeah, good documentation, part of the way through as well, like I've said. So there you go. Okay, just want to make sure I say all that I need to in this, all that I feel should be said at least. But yeah, okay, the index finger comes inside, the pinky finger comes inside, and our hands really wrap around our thumbs like this, with the pads of all the fingers wrapping around the pad of the thumb. And so using things flat too, right, it just widens the hand, because that pinky just has to come out, and then the pinky's not involved, and then your wrist takes a turn for the worse, if you will. We talk about involving the pinky fingers in what we do, because if you're holding something flat, you pretty much can't involve the pinky finger. And so that rounding, oh, this is a good demonstration, then allows the pinky finger to be involved, and then your wrist is neutral. But flat things take the wrist out of its neutral, the pinky finger's not working, and then, like I'm saying, that's where that bone spur comes from. That's why all that happens through the whole arm, coming from the hands, happen. So that's why my right hand is so much wider than my left, even still, and this is the case for almost everybody on the earth. Well, that's one of the reasons, but also a lot of what I discussed in this, and then just what we do under In The Image Clothing Company, is that getting out of these chronic patternings and scar tissue, and clothing really is the only fix, truly, for human beings' physical problems. It's the only thing physically placed on us, and that's where this really comes from, other than things like holding flat things that just would happen whether you had clothing on or not. But you probably wouldn't be doing it if your body wasn't already in an incorrect position because of things like clothing, all the things I can mention, right? That just places your wrist out of its neutral. So there you go. 13th of September 2025. And yeah, check out each of the 4 sides of In the Image Clothing Company if you'd like to check out what we do. Okay, and there you go. Yeah.